Hey, this is Big Lou. And when I'm on the internet, I'm listening to Jack Dapper Blues.
I'm Dietrich Farr, listening to Jack Dapper Blues.
Hey everybody, this is Adam Gusso.
Hi, I'm Veronica Jackson, America's acoustic folk blues singer. You're listening to Jack Dapper Blues.
Hello, this is Ray Brooks. You're listening to Jack Dapper Blues. Hi, this is Guy Davis.
Hey there, folks. This is Don Fleming, the American songster, slapping the dap with Jack Dapper Blues.
Hey everybody, this is Walter Trout, and you are listening to Jack Dapper Blues.
Hey, this is Shamika Copeland.
Hey, I'm Ben Turner of Piedmont Blues. I'm here with Valerie Turner.
And we are bluesing with Lamont Jack Pearlie, the best radio station for true blues.
Hi, I'm Larry Griffin, and I keep it locked and loaded on Jack Dapper Blues. Yes, yes, yes.
Tell me who's that is waiting. Tell me who's that is waiting. I said, Johnny Revelation. Tell me what is he writing. He's writing Revelation. He's writing in a book of the 17. Oh man, I hear he spoke of his son and his father. He told that he never was home on hiding. That's his gospel, a hurting man cry. Jesus is only on the side, but he told me my Lord, and he said that he home, and he said he go down. He said he went home, well I got them to tell him to how he said. Quick to him to the break of day, oh John, he just overstand what is a thing he said, something like he said his feeling. Hey John, what do it mean to be Jesus in the hands of the wicked? Tell me who's that is ready. John Revelation. Tell me who's that is ready. I said John Revelation. Tell me what is he writing? He's writing Revelation. He's writing in a book of the 17. Oh, John.
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening, blues people? Let me know if y'all can hear me. I think I'm a little late. And if I am, that's all right. We are here now. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. Let's get to it. First and foremost, you just heard John the Revelator, and that was recorded by John Wesley Work III. We're going to talk about John Wesley Work III, someone that those of you who know, first of all, can y'all hear me? Because I know my mic is up. We're going to talk about John Wesley Work III, John Wesley Work II, Fifth Jubilee, singers, all that good stuff. But I just want to do, as I like to say, some house cleaning. This is my root mug, Tree of Life mug, all praise due. So listen, house cleaning, then we're going to get to it, okay? So what you heard was John the Revelator, and mind you, I will put in the feed the titles of the songs, who sang them. These are Library of Congress songs that we're using tonight, so you all know what's going on. All right, so that was John the Revelator, recorded by John Wesley Work. And I'll give you guys all that information later. First, I want to do some daily house cleaning, or weekly. Every time we come in, you know about this. Hey, Don, what's happening? I know you heard that song, young brother. Good stuff. So, first and foremost, I want y'all to go to Jack Dapper Blues Radio and sign up for our email blast, right? Jack Dapper Blues radio.tv. Also, go to our Patreon, right? You go to the Patreon, you will be able to get this as well as this, the Jack Dapper Blues Reflexive Podcast. And on the Jack Dapper Blues Reflexive Podcast, I discuss, I speak about the field, the discipline, how I feel about the works that I do. I share it's reflexive in every sense of the word. So I share my experience, good, bad, and indifferent, what I thought I did good, what I could do better, how I feel about the discipline. One of the last ones that I recorded that's there now that you should go listen to is the Oh, you don't know? I thought you knew. Because this one is really good. And I want you all to check this one out. Am I playing around? No. I want you guys to go and check out the Jack Dapper Blues Reflexive Podcast. Okay. And the last one is the Reverse Omission Season. That was the last installation. The reverse. S. Dot. That was the reverse. You have heard me play it. That's right, young brother. You have heard me play it. But Jack Dapper Blues Reflexive Podcast, the Reverse Omission Season. Okay, but you have to be a paid member for that particular episode. Also, look out for Blues People Music and Folklore at a city town near you. It's a curriculum. Okay, we teach how to the history of the blues, how to create your first blues song at the most skeleton way, the most basic fundamentals. And we also teach you how to document, give an oral history interview, a folkloristic ethnographic interview, okay? And always get our merch. All right, so now let's get to it. Let's get to it. So that was John the Revelator. I have a whole lot of papers here. Okay. I'm dropping some of the papers, honestly. So I want y'all to be prepared for what's going down this evening, because what we're about to get into is part 2, okay, from slave seculars to the blues, part 2, the legacy of Black spirituals and hymnals, and how and what does that mean for the blues? What does that mean for the blues people? Okay, remember, chime in, jump in the conversation. This is not a one-way conversation. Okay, and I have a couple of songs to play for you all. If you remember some of the songs I played last week. Now, just to kind of remind y'all what we were discussing last week. Last week we discussed what slave seculars were, the meaning of them, the function, what are considered slave seculars, right? So just a quick recap. Slave seculars were songs that were cultivated and formed on slave plantations by enslaved or imprisoned indigenous Black and some African Black, but mostly indigenous to the Americas, but enslaved people on the Americas nonetheless. What they were doing was creating song to counteract the forced narrative from the missionary. These songs broke down into field hollers. They broke down into work and prison songs. They culminated into the blues, right? And corn shucking. We discussed all these things last week. So I just wanted to give you guys, and we're going to get back into some of these things because with today's topic, these things are actually quite relevant. Okay? They're actually quite relevant. From Slave Seculars to the Blues, Part 2. And why are they relevant? Because tonight we're discussing the legacy of Black spirituals and hymnals in this capacity. Okay? So now, what does that mean and why is that important? So the first song I played for you all was John the Revelator. And majority of these songs that I'm playing are recorded by John Wesley Work III. Okay? So let you see who he is. We spoke about him, and I'll go more into details this evening. All right, as we speak about quite a few people. Okay. So we're focusing on how Black spirituals and hymnals, along with slave seculars, shaped the blues. So now, if you remember from last week, I discussed the blues may be even more directly linked to slave seculars, keyword secular. However, and we're going to get to folk belief. We're going to get to classism. We're going to get to education. And we're not even talking about imperialism or colonialism in the sense of how the white power structure there was, treated blacks like Jim Crow and all these things. We're going to discuss it within the realm of what black is, right? So there's educated blacks that were of the cloth, and there was quote unquote supposedly uneducated blacks that were of the blues and connected to more of a traditional folk belief rather than the AME church. They were in the culture of hoodoo and Pentecost, right? Rather than the Catholic church or the Methodist church, they were into Ifa and practiced what you can consider, some call it witch doctors, medicine doctors, and things of the like. And you hear this in the music, right? So I give you that so you understand the connection or why some people believe blues is more of a direct connection to slave seculars than to the hymnals or spirituals. But I'd argue that both slave seculars and those who do not subscribe to what we would call African or European Christianity ideology, right? How their belief, as well as those of the Southern Black Christian, both influence and inform the blues, okay? So now with that being said, let's get into this a little bit. I think now this person, I should show John Wesley Work on this song, only because all these songs are recorded by John Wesley Work, okay? Let me see if it's the right song. I want to give you another example. All right?
landed, 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 my dear mother, mother, mother. It has landed, 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 my dear mother, mother, mother. It has landed, 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 my dear mother, mother, mother. Get on board, don't you hear me talking to you? Get on board. Yonder standing, standing, my dear father, waiting, waiting. Yonder standing, standing, my dear father, waiting, waiting. Yonder standing, 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 my dear father, waiting, waiting. Get on board, don't you hear me talking to you? Get on board.
All right, so that was the old ship of Zion. Okay. Now, John Wesley Work, these songs that I'm playing for you, John Wesley Work recorded this in Tennessee in 1941. It is considered African American Southern music, field recordings, gospel music, and I believe it's the Holloway High School Quartet, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So now that is it. So another thing we're going to be discussing is two versions of the spirituals and the hymnals. Okay. I want to play certain songs, but in this capacity, I can't. Right. Because of copyright. So I'm playing what I believe to be public domain songs that's on the Library of Congress, but you can find it. But, you want to hear Mahalia Jackson. Let's start there. And the reason why we're starting with Mahalia Jackson is because, let's see, we're getting pinged. The reason why we're starting with Mahalia Jackson is for the simple fact that the Black spirituals is, at least to me, the sacred roots of the blues. Now, when you think about the Black spirituals, you want to think about the emotional depth of the spirituals, okay? How the spirituals convey sorrow. And this goes back to W.E.B. Du Bois coining it sorrow songs. We spoke about that, right? Then there's endurance and the coded message. Now, there's a lot of scholars that I name that often because their scholarship informs me. And when you think about James Combs, when you think about Leroy Jones, and there's others that we'll get to, but Zora Neale Hurston, there's others we'll get to, but these folk, John Wesley Work, James Cone, W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, and quite a few, they've even 12 Years a Slave. If you read the original book of the actual man who was depicted in the film, he wrote a book, and I have the book. I believe you can get at the time. I was able to get the book for like a penny. I believe it was a public domain book, and I got it on Kindle, if I'm not mistaken. Right? He speaks about the music of his time, and not for nothing, man. I wish I had this in front of me. I read something recently how someone kind of, I don't want to say interrogated because that's the wrong word, but they dove deep into that book to find the ethnomusicology methods and reflexivities of the writings and how sonics inform the culture of that time. But I brought this up because he uses the term reels, which is another term for Black music of that day, right? So now, Black spirituals as sacred roots of the blues, and for me, the connection is to me, and I told you all this before, and anyone who's seen me perform or heard me speak, the blues is very sacred. Now, this may seem repetitive. Some connect it to slave seculars because to them the blues are a secular music or a sinful music, if you will. But just because, well, my definition, the spirituals speak of Jesus, of one day getting to the promised land in heaven, of Yahushua, Yahweh, the Most High God, the Lord, intervening and blessing our spirits in the afterlife. Where the blues as a spiritual music, to me, may not necessarily be calling for heaven in the next dimension, but it is definitely discussing the hells of this dimension while looking forward or toward a heaven, whether it is heaven here or in the next dimension. It may not speak for God's or towards God's intervention, but it could be asking God, oh, woe, why do you forsake me? And this is all, to me, sacred and biblical, right? Also, to that point, the spirituals and the blues both share the idea of hardship, longing, and survival. I may have to break down, and it's over there on my shelf. Actually, it is right there. No, 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 no. No, we won't do that today. I'll tell you what the book is. Let me know if you're rocking with me. I'll tell you what the book is. It is Black Theology by James Combs. And if you read that book, and then you think about and his theory on the connection of the Bible, Israelites, Black folk in America, liberation, and the stories of the woes and triumphs of the Israelites juxtapose the woes and triumphs of Black Americans. And then you think about the spirituals and the blues, you will see the connection, okay? Then just the function, and when I say the function, let me rephrase that, the structure, how blues and spirituals and pastoring and ministering happens, right? Call and respond. And we spoke about that before as well. So ultimately what we're doing here is making the connection. Last week we discussed about slave seculars, field hollers, call response, these different things. And I mentioned Black spirituals, but I also told you that today we were going to discuss the spirituals in more detail and its connection. So now when you think of call and response, that tradition, you think of field hollers. Early blues, you think of work songs, but you also must think about spirituals and the hymnals. Okay? If you have any questions, jump in. This is strictly about the music and its folk belief. You know what I'm saying? The music and its folk belief. Okay, I think I played the song last week. I want to play it again. Okay. Is it this one? What's happening? That's not it. I think it's this one.
When the roll be called into heaven, I'll answer to my name, brother. When the roll be called into heaven, I'll answer to my name when I get to heaven. God knows I'm gonna walk. When I get to heaven, God knows I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna argue with his father. I'm gonna chat with his son. I'm gonna talk about the world that I just come from.
All right, so I wanted to play that because I wanted to talk about the styles of the black hymnals. And there's the backwoods singing, there's the traditional classic singing, right? So there's lined out hymnody, which is an old school call and response. It's hymnody is like melody, okay? Lined out, okay? Call and response, it is a slower and it's passed a slower form. It is passed down orally, and it's prominent in the rural working class of black churches. Okay. Now, arranged with its classical influence, the hymnody is the arranged hymnody and the lined out hymnody. These are the two that we're discussing right now, just so I could be clear with you all, okay? The lined out hymnody is old school, and the arranged hymnody is classically influenced. Okay, so it's more structured, it's written, it's associated with educated black churches. And this comes into John Wesley work in one of the songs that I played earlier. Because that song, well, I'm looking for a picture that I thought I wanted to use that I thought you all would like. So now I have to find the darn thing because I don't see it. I guess I didn't use it, but either way, it doesn't matter. The point is this goes back to. Hold on, let me let my people see me, and y'all could chime in if you want. Now, remember, I mentioned earlier about class, right? About tax bracket, about economics and education. Okay. So the old school lined out and the classical arranged suggests social, economic, and educational differences. Now, I bring this up every so often, particularly from one of my favorite scholars, composers, and musicologist actually, John Wesley Work in his book makes a clear distinction between the people of the blues and the people of the hymnals, the gospels, the church. And when he makes this distinction, it correlates and it reflects lined out hymnody as well as arranged hymnody, okay? And why? Because the lined out reflects his definition of the blues people, but more so the arrange reflects his definition of the people of the church that are educated and forward thinking. So now when you bring that up, or when I bring that up, what does that mean? Because then we could think about the Fisk Jubilee singers and why they chose to use a particular version of hymnals as they went around the country to raise money for not only their choir but the School of Fisk, because they were singing to white audiences. So in singing to white audiences, they gave the more arranged, structured music or hymnals that was associated with educated folk, rather than what the what I call backwoods, not backward, backwoods, hoot and hollering pastor of the storefront church, which would be the lined out. you know. So that's kind of so that's part of the difference, right? Now, we can also talk about hymnals as an oral tradition shaping gospel and the blues. And see, and this is why I want to hear your thoughts. How many of y'all been to Southern churches, Southern style churches, black churches in the city, wherever? Because you got to also remember the location. What does that mean? Rural churches stayed traditional, hooting, hollering, starting to sing when you're giving your testimony, breaking in the song and all types of things. Where the churches that went to the city, where the more educated, more metropolis, I don't say upscale, but you could say that. You could say assimilated, right? Different tax bracket. Their service was structured in a different way, but there was still a connection, but it was structured in a different way. Do you understand what I'm saying? I think we should go to another song. And as we go to a song, I want to show you this gentleman. This is John Wesley Work II, John Wesley Work's father.
Baby, I know when I'm gone. From Texas, looking back of you. From Texas, looking back of you. From Texas, looking back of you. You're talking, rapping like a dog on me.
All right, so that was Po' Boy Long Way From Home. Okay, this was a rendition sang by Sonny Chestian. Okay, it was recorded in Georgia, 1941. So Sonny, more than likely, is a Georgia blues performer. Okay, and that's right. That was the 145. That was the 145. And Sonny, more than likely, is a Georgia performer. That was blues, and again, this was recorded by John Wesley Work III. This is John Wesley Work II, John Wesley Work III's father. This is John Wesley Work III who recorded the song I just played, which, to give you the example of the connection between musically, sonically, stylistically, the connection between the slave seculars, spirituals, hymnals, and blues. But just so I can give you some context, and you can also go and see my interview with a graduate of Fisk who actually was a student of John Wesley Work III. Okay, Geo. But just so you know, so the Work family, and I'm going to go down the line here, is John Wesley Work 1, John Wesley Work 2, and John Wesley Work 3. And they were instrumental in collecting, preserving, and promoting Black spirituals. Now, I really want to, this is very important. And one of the reasons why it's very important, because if you understand the dates of when these gentlemen were doing this, from John Wesley Work 1 all the way down, and the women in the family, you would also, this goes back to something that I'm always talking about. Okay, let my people see my face while I'm talking. All right, I gotta let y'all see my face as I'm telling you this. I want to see y'all as I'm telling you this, and I want you to participate in this conversation. And I will go back to showing you John Wesley Work and then his father as I give you more information on them. But what I need you to understand, they clearly suggest, and the reason why this is exciting for me is because I already know that all of the works are what you can consider folklorists, musicologists, and the like. And why I get so passionate and animated at this point of the conversation is because a lot of times when you're in the field and or in the discipline, you're learning the history of the field and the discipline, or you're just trying to find some of these collections for whatever you're doing. Public programming, whether it's in museums and schools of all sorts, organizations, whether you're trying to put together some sort of event honoring your traditional music and all of the like, you don't hear these names, John Wesley Work 1, 2, or 3, but you hear non-Black American scholars' names. When you come into the discipline, which is what I would like you to do, as I continue these, I will continue to attempt to recruit you as a folklorist, a cultural anthropologist, ethnomusicologist. You learn a lot about people that don't look like you. And one of the issues is not the fact that they don't look like you, because we don't want to be divisive, and we're not divisive. The problem is it is always framed as if no one else is doing this work. However, they have John Wesley Work, the first, second, and third, doing this work since the 1800s. And the establishment of this field in the Americas was in the 1800s. I just had to make a stop and do that. Again, if you want more on that, go check this out. The reverse omission season starts it off, and I'll be giving you another one this week of the Jack Dapper Blues Reflexive podcast. Now, I also said that if you want to hear the Jack Dapper Blues blog, I need 20 more Patreons as a paid membership, okay? So now, let's get back to the work. Sorry, y'all. I get really excited when I hear about this, okay? I get truly, truly, truly excited when we were discussing such work. So now, again, the works were instrumental in collecting, preserving, and promoting Black spirituals, ensuring their lasting influence on American music, not just one music, not just one type of genre, America as a whole, okay? Their work, especially alongside the Fisk Jubilee singers, helped transform spirituals from oral traditions into recognized and respected musical forms, influencing gospel, jazz, and of course the blues. Now I say jazz, but blues more important because jazz is just another term utilized to sell the blues. Because jazz was birthed as the blues in New Orleans, New Orleans, okay? Crescent City. Do y'all understand what I'm telling you? All right. Now, John Wesley Work 1, that's not one, was born in 1848 and died in 1925. The first composer of spirituals in the family, of course. He was born after the Civil War. And Work 1 was one of the first black composers and one of the first black composers. Hold on. Now, I don't have a picture of the father or the grandfather, right? John Wesley Work, the third grandfather. But John Wesley Work 1 was of the first black collectors of this. And remember, I got to get you a picture. I got to get y'all a picture of Charlotte Fortin Gremke, who I have to say is the first human to document, as far as we know, right? That's the third. Okay, we're talking about his grandfather, born in 1848, after the Civil War, and of the first black composers. So he's just not a collector, but he's a practitioner. Okay, y'all know I get excited at this point. Excuse me. Black composer and he's a practitioner who collects Negro spirituals. John Wesley Work 1. He also arranged and wrote spirituals at the time when they were primarily passed down orally. What does that mean? I got to look at my peoples when I'm talking. What does it mean to be of the first people to take something of oral transmission, oral transmission, and write it down? So he puts it to text in another way for it to be preserved, another way for it to be experienced, okay? Because the text is also an experience. It's also performative to a degree. So he takes it from our original cultural, not just engagement, but I guess dissemination and discourse. And here's a word that I don't like using at all. He transcribes it. To allow the people to experience it as he himself composes and writes. Because, you know, at this time, in the 18th, this is why the New Amsterdam Musical Association was created, because you needed to be part of a union to perform or get paid as a musician. They also had the Colors Music Union, upstate. Was it Rochester? I know the great blues and black music historian, radio personality, actor, and poet, Mr. Douglas Curry, wrote an article about the Colored Musicians Union. And you can find that on the African American Folklore's website. Let me give you. Okay. So we're talking about a musician who transcribed our oral expression to preserve it. So they were forward thinking. Though they were not in the conversations of a child's, and some of you that I'm saying some of these names, you all are not, some of you know, some of you don't. And please understand, if I'm saying it, it's not that I'm not talking above your head. Look them up. You know? of a man. That's what I'll do. I'm not going to say these names. I'm going. I want you all to go become a Patreon. Let me show you where to go. Okay. Go. I want you to go become a Patreon, and then I want you to listen to the Reflexive podcast, the Reverse Omission Season. I also want you to pick up the next issue of the African American Folklores, where I name some folk. Okay. No, I'm not trying to cause trouble. Okay. So now, John Wesley his work helped solidify Black churches, as an essential cultural and spiritual force. So now, he was born in 1848. Okay. His son, John Wesley Work II, was born in 1871. So now, here's the interesting thing. Man, we're already at 60 minutes. All right. Here's the interesting thing. They're being born at early formulations of what we will come to know as the blues, what we call the blues today. The blues was already going on, but what we know as the blues, both John Wesley Work I and John Wesley Work II were born during the years of this formulation, even though the blues were already being played. Reels, old time music, right? Because Leadbelly played music or songs of 100 years ago. Henry Thomas played songs of 100 years ago. Mance Lipscomb played, and when I say 100 years ago, 100 years ago from when they were performing it. And the people that I'm mentioning were performing in the late 1800s and early 1900s throughout, I guess you could say some of them on to the 60s. Sun House would be one of those. Memphis Minnie, quite a few. But the point I'm making is 1848, 1871, 1925. We're looking at the formulative years of what we would know to be pre-war blues, post-war blues, country blues, migration blues, all formulated by the music composed by these folk in church, or by the music or the expression, the cultural expression disseminated by possibly so uneducated folk. And when I say uneducated towards Western scholarly standards. So there would be the field hollers, the work songs, the slave seculars, and then the educated Negroes, right? The lined out, the arranged, the hymnals, the spirituals, all informing each other, coming from the same place to a degree. Okay? So now, John Wesley Work II, expanding and documenting the spirituals, is a professor at Fisk University who was dedicated to the teaching and arranging of spirituals for public performance. I'm using these terminologies intentionally. He co-authored a book, or I would say first collection of spirituals, one of the first collections folk songs of the American Negro, which later his son, John Wesley Work III, does. He helped shape the repertoire of the Fifth Jubilee Singers, refining spirituals into concert-ready choral pieces. Hold on, let me show you who I'm talking about. Just in case you didn't know. Helped shape the repertoire of the Fifth Jubilee Singers by refining their spirituals, songs they were singing, into concert-ready choral pieces. Okay? I wanted to look at you. Okay? Let's get back to it. Now, John Wesley Work III. Now, all of these guys I have a lot of reverence for. Okay? He was born in 1901. And he is the most influential of the Work family. He was a musicologist, historian, composer, and performer. Now, why was he the most influential? Maybe because by the time he comes along and does the work, he can actually take credit for it. Not that his father and grandfather wasn't taking credit, but maybe they were taking credit more locally. John Wesley Work III also went to Jesus, I can't believe I forgot the name of this music school, this prestigious. He went to Columbia and this prestigious music school in New York City, which I can't believe I can't remember. He also traveled to the South collecting all types of and recording Black folk music. That's what I call it, Black folk music. Why is that? Because we're about to find out what really Juilliard. Thank you. That's the name of the school. He also attended Juilliard, Wesley Work III. But when he traveled to the South collecting and recording Black folk music, this is what. Wait, let me show you what I'm talking about. This is what would, I guess, catapult him, because now he's also documenting the secular aspect of Black folk expression, along with the sacred expression of Black culture. So he's documenting and recording, because he has the technology. He has the technology, because you also got to remember something. In the eight, so there was this time where you can record something on this type of record type of thing, and you can only play it once. So nobody really wanted to play it. So by the time when John Wesley Work III comes, it's being recorded on technology that can be played multiple times. Okay? Man, we're already at an hour. Man, okay. And I really didn't mean to make this that much about the works, but I get worked up when we talk about the works. He authored American Negro songs and spirituals, preserving over 200 spirituals and folk songs. And those folk songs are what you call blues. Baby, baby. All right? Now, let me get back to the hymnals and the spirituals, because, well, first let me just explain why I had to spend so much time giving the story of John Wesley Work 1, 2, and 3 as we speak about. Yes, I'm gonna play it. Nope, that's not what I want to put on. There you go. The legacy of Black spirituals and hymnals as it pertains to the blues, because we're talking about a lineage, right? 3 scholars, composers, and performers, one more of a performer than the other, but they all were performers, musical directors, and things like this. And we're talking about from give or take, if 1848 is the birth date of John Wesley Work one, we can easily say 1868 is the around about beginnings of his career. I say around about because at that time he would be 20. And a lot of folk in the space probably was doing some sort of efforts as documenting, collecting, recording, singing, writing, composing, whatever at 15. But let's say 1868 at 20, he begins his work. So if he begins his work at 1868, John Wesley Work III dies let me start that over because I want to be really clear with this and why the Work family, to me, is very imperative and significant to the idea of from slave secularists to the blues, the legacy of Black spirituals and hymnals and how it informs the blues. So John Wesley Work, one, being born in 1848, let's just guesstimate his career begins to take off at 20. Or if not take off, it begins. He's introduced to whatever capacity because of the level of work he reached. He was in the church, he was composing, he was in college, and he was doing these things at this age. 1868, by 20, John Wesley Work III died in 1967. So we're talking about 99 years of not just Black traditional music representation or composition or putting together public programming and concerts or performing or documenting or teaching. Do you understand? So we're talking about just about 100 years of traditional Black expression by this family alone. Didn't even talk about the mothers, the grandmothers, the wives who also worked with the as vocal coaches for the Jubilee singers or in other capacities in the Black church, in spirituals, and in Black folk music, folk songs, which would be blues, song. The term songster, but there's a terminology that I can't remember. Najee, what's happening with you? Good to see you. I'm happy you do. It was 100 years, okay? So now when you think about the work these men did and the women in documenting, and let me just also throw in there, John Wesley Work didn't like to work with certain scholars because certain scholars were just looking to preserve an antebellum tradition, if you will, where the Work family documented, and a term that is still being, I don't say debated, synthesized, interrogated. Those are the words I'll use. I like the term conserved because preserve means keeping something effectively in its form without allowing it to grow or evolve, but it has to stay here. The Work family particularly John Wesley Work III. And the reason why I say particularly him is because I've read documents written by him and statements by him that he clearly stated he tracked the progression of Black traditional music and expression. So that falls more on the conservation side of things. And if you want to get into ecology, if you want to get into let me slow down. Let me slow down. I did see it. I liked it. Well, I'm a fan of Dr. Gates, number one, and number two, I had a couple of friends in the film, so I don't know if I'm being biased. I thought it did a good job introducing concepts. It's hard to go, like, perfect example, right? I'm at a hour and 12 minutes, and I'm not even nowhere near close to what it was I was trying to, not even trying to, close to the entire story that I'm trying to share. And this is part 2 from last week. So I give him that. And I also have to, it's been a minute. I don't remember everything, but what I did see, I liked. And you know something, my family and I, we just watched Sly, the burden of black. Sly lived the burden of Black genius, right? I liked it. There's just so many things going through. I think I don't think I know Dr. Gates. I would say they're one of the best jobs, considering majority of the time these stories are never really told by us. Some of them are, but they don't get that kind of traction. You know, and you didn't ask a hard question, Sister Niji. The reason why I'm in such a reflexive moment right now is because I really believe it is imperative for all the nook, crannies, and nuances of our story to be told on our terms. And it just doesn't seem like we ever have enough time to get through it all, you know? So with that being said, you know, the works played an instrumental role in how we're informed about our music, our traditional music, our worship music. And for me, what I'm trying to convey, and I've said this for those who've seen me perform before, I've always said this. And in my performance, I don't want to say I talk a lot, but I give context. And the blues to me is sacred. So that is a worship song, or worship music to me is the blues, right? That is also worship music, which is what we get into. So not just the structure, whether it's an arranged hymnody or a line out or a call and response or all these, classifications. Okay. Man, I'm a little okay, look. So right now I'm looking at my notes. We got some more to talk about. Could I get a promise that you guys will join me next Sunday between 9 and 9:30 Central Time so we can continue this conversation from slave seculars to the blues. So last week, let me see something. All right, work with me for a minute. Last week, this is this week, sorry. I have both this. Okay, I don't have last week's. Let me see if I can get last week up because I'm trying to make a point here. Okay, good folk. Don't look crazy because I'm uploading something. Those who rock with me heard me say this before. And it's taking a minute to upload, so just give me a second because I want it to be clear. Okay, here we go. All right, sorry. Last week, we started this particular conversation from slave seculars to the blues, preserving and conserving Black American folklore. That's how we started, okay? This week, my man, what's happening with you? This week, we spoke about the legacy of Black spirituals and hymnals. All of these things relevant to the formulation of the blues people's expression, right? So what I'm thinking is next week we will kind of finish up the significance of the legacy of Black spirituals and hymnals. And I think we need to talk about blues as a protest song. And I'm gonna ask, so now you know what? I want y'all, my peoples, my tribe, to chime in. So again, we started with what it is. Then the categories of Black expression that falls under slave seculars. Then we bring in the sacred aspect. All of this is happening, Then we touched on class, tax bracket, education, like social issues. These things play a part. Now, I'm thinking we're going to finish up with spirituals and hymnals and then go into protest songs of Black blues. I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes. Because ultimately, what we're getting to is the blues as an expression and as an interaction and a reflection of the behavior of a people is an oral tradition, right? Oral, sensory, right? These functions. Okay? So if y'all want to go into blues as a protest song coming from this slave secular, understanding its structure, understanding its roots in sacred roots. This is why I have this Tree of Life mug. Roots as in sacred, right? And then function as protest song. Drop a number 1 in the chat for me. Matter of fact, do you even think blues can be a protest song? I'm going to ask what may be a silly question. Do you believe Black spirituals can be a protest song? I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to answer. So 1, if you want to go into protest songs, and then the second question is, and you can just answer however you answer, do you think blues can be a protest song? I'll give you a couple of minutes to answer. Matter of fact, while I'm waiting for your answer, I'm going to play y'all a tune. Let's get a nice picture up here that may reflect the tune. Is that a nice picture? I don't know. This is Rube Lacey and his wife. Reuben Lacey is Reuben Lacey is very instrumental to the blues. He's adjacent to the story of the works, right? And Reuben Lacey. So you can go on. I'm going to drop it in this, if I can find it without making too much noise. I want you guys to listen to this. If I look crazy, because I'm looking for this interview I did with a great scholar and a great musician, David Evans, who's a folklorist. Well, at least that's how I receive him. If I'm wrong, Dr. Evans, please, you could contact me anytime and let me know. I want you all to listen to this. I'm going to put it in the chat. And what I would like you all to do is listen to this right here in the chat, okay? Not well, you could, if you want to do it now, that's up to you. But Reuben Lacey is really important to this conversation, just like the Work family is very important to this conversation. Okay, so listen, Sister Niji, are you going to be here with us next week? Brother L.A., are y'all going to be here next week? Because again, even as a instructor, I don't want to call myself a professor yet. Even as an instructor, I don't like talking at people. I like having dialogue and like we used to say, we build it. Build it with the gods. I had to say that. But I dig it. I agree. So come next week so we can have this discussion. The core of the blues came out of absolutely. And that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, good. So that means next week we can definitely discuss blues as a protest song, but with all these elements we've been discussing. If you are just coming and like Brother LA just finding the platform, you can go catch the last 2 weeks to catch up, because we define slave seculars, which I think is very important. And just to recap, one of the reasons why I thought it was imperative to define slave seculars, because I have a Facebook group, right? And a Facebook group, which just disappeared as I was about to share this information with you all. Why am I not surprised? That always happens. The Facebook group, actually, I will put that in the feed as well. Excuse me. It's called Black Spiritual, Field Hollers, and Slave Seculars, right? Now, wait, I got to leave this here because I got to make sure I remember where we are, because I have to serve you all correctly. What ends up happening is in that group, it was to not just have this conversation, but give these examples and things, because there is the story of the blues. I call it the blues narrative. And in a couple of weeks, I will present or have a full episode discussion on the blues narrative. Okay. The blues people narrative, and where this comes from and why this is important. Okay. But there are misnomers about the blues, and a lot of what people think are the blues or what they learn is the blues or what they're taught or whatever, how they're introduced to the blues never comes from the blues people. So what I've been trying to do is not all I've been trying to do is give the proper context to our story. All right. Right. What I just dropped in here should be, it is not what I thought it was. I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry about that. So then let me ask you a question then. Is it LA or is it La? How do I say your name? Forgive me for saying that and being and assuming I'm so sorry. How do I say your name, please? Is it La or LA? And please forgive me for assuming. All right. La, got it. All right, that's cool. All right, groovy. So let me just make sure. Okay, so we've stopped here at the two forms of the hymnals. Next week, we're going to go into slave secular and the blues, the secularation of the spirituals, but we'll culminate that conversation with the introduction and hopefully discussion of blues as a protest song. Okay. Now remember, if you want, I want you to check out the Jack Dapper Blues Reflexive podcast. You have to become a Patreon paid member for that, okay? And the most recent episode is the reverse omission season, okay? You could check us on all platforms. All right. If you on YouTube, please subscribe to us on YouTube. If you frequent Spotify, subscribe to us there. If you frequent Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us there. If you really rock with us, subscribe to us at all of these places. Because I'm definitely rocking with y'all. Y'all are my tribe. If you wish to donate, there's Cash App and Venmo and PayPal. Okay. I dig that. I dig that. All right, good folk. So we're at the 90-minute mark. We can never get all of this information into one episode, and I really don't want to keep y'all on here for 4 hours. So I'll see y'all next week. Remember, between 9 and 9:30 Central Time is when I usually come on here to broadcast and talk to y'all. We're going to keep keeping on. You heard me? One love. Keep bluesing.
my dear mother, 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 in a landy, 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 my dear mother, 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 in a landy, 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 my dear mother, 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 get on board, don't you get on board. Yonder standing, my dear father, waiting, waiting. Yonder standing, my dear father, waiting, waiting. Yonder standing, my dear father, waiting, waiting. Get on board.